Well, good afternoon, guys, and let's just jump right into the topic of today's video, which is Claytonia perfoliata, commonly known as miner's lettuce. Now, Claytonia perfoliata is a plant found commonly in the western United States, which you can see right here, extending into southern Canada as well as northern Mexico. Though it is oddly almost entirely absent from the states of New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, and eastern Montana. There is no obvious reason why it shouldn't be found in this eastern third of the western United States. It's full of suitable habitat for the plant, but it's just not really that common there for whatever reason. That being said, in the parts of the west it is found, it can be found in a wide array of habitats as long as there are suitable, humid, damp, and shaded microsites for the plant to grow in. So you can find it growing in the low deserts, where it will be found growing in the shade of trees, along riverbanks, all the way up to the tree line, where it will also be found growing in the shade of trees or over larger plants, or maybe rocks, and everywhere in between. Now, Claytonia perfoliata, in my opinion, is just such a cool plant with a very unique look. Makes it pretty easy to identify, and this comes primarily from its perfoliate leaf, which you can see here, hence the name perfoliata. Now, a perfoliate leaf is simply a leaf that wraps entirely around the stem of the plant, giving it the appearance of being pierced by the stem. And in this case, it's actually technically two different leaves, because the genus Claytonia typically has opposite leaves. So from that ancestral form, this plant, I believe, firstly, the leaves just evolved to meet and fuse at the base, at that point becoming perfoliate. And from there, it then got shorter and wider, eventually taking on this almost circular shape. I mean, not quite circular, but you can see it's kind of evolving to that point. And it's really easy to see what I'm talking about on this leaf here, which is not even really perfoliate. Like, the flower stalk is coming out the side of it, and it's quite easy to see how it's just two different fused leaves. As I just said, the inflorescence comes right out of the center of the perfoliate leaf and has these white flowers with 5 petals. Keep an eye open for that feature as well. Of course, this plant also has basal leaves, as most herbaceous plants do, which you can see right here come out of the sort of rosette it has. On these long petioles, they are typically rhombic, deltate, or even reniform or kidney shaped. And sometimes the plant is tinged with red. This comes from the fact it's a member of the order Caryophyllales, which has these very vivid betalain pigments. It's the only order that has them, that color many of the species within. Now, going off of these features, it should be very easy to get a solid identification of this plant anytime. As long as you're in the western United States, you won't mix it up for any other plants, but even just going off of how it kind of looks, like just understanding how it looks and then using that as a reference, you almost never mistake it for any other plant. Aside for some very close relatives, such as Claytonia parviflora or Claytonia rubra, which are frankly so closely related and hybridized so frequently with this one, it's honestly not even worth trying to distinguish the three of them in the wild. Now, the genus Claytonia is a member of the family Montiaceae, which until recently, I believe it was APG3 in 2009, was not widely recognized as a distinct family, and most authors opted instead to place this genera in the family Portulacaceae. Now, both Portulacaceae and Montiaceae are members of the order Caryophyllales, which is known for having many species in it that are either succulent or drought adapted otherwise, or adapted to very harsh soils like very saline or alkaline soils, or sometimes even both. While many others occur in pretty hospitable habitats like you might find anywhere, such as Claytonia perfoliata. That all aside, DNA testing eventually showed that the genus Portulaca was quite a bit different from the rest of the genera then placed in the family, so the others were evicted and given a new home in the family Montiaceae. That being said, it's kind of hard to tell the families apart using the traditional features you would use to distinguish families. There's a reason it took until 2009 to resolve this facet of the families. For instance, both of them have species typically with 2 sepals, 5 petals, though sometimes more. This is especially the case in Montiaceae, by the way. About as many stamens as there are petals, though often double or even many more, and a capsular fruit. That all being said, there are a couple of features you can use to distinguish the family from each other, and the first has to do with the ovary position. The family Portulacaceae generally has ovaries that are semi-inferior. That means that the sepals and petals, collectively called the perianth, attach at sort of the midway point of the ovary, while in Montiaceae, they are generally superior. So they attach at the base of the ovary, and the ovary is entirely above the perianth. And the other feature, it has to do with how the capsular fruit splits apart. In the family Portulacaceae, it is circumscissile. That means it dehisces transversely or horizontally, so it's like an Easter egg opening up. So imagine like a lid falling off and the seeds then are released. While in Montiaceae, the fruit typically dehisces vertically. So like imagine peeling a banana or setching an orange. That's sort of how it splits apart from top to bottom, or maybe from bottom to top. And now the $1 million question. Is Claytonia perfoliata edible? Well, of course it is. It's called miner's lettuce. How else would I get that name if it wasn't edible? Not only is it edible, I'd describe it as highly edible, or at least that's what I've been told. I haven't tried it yet. But I got a few leaves right here, which I'll be trying for the very first time. So let's see how we taste. Yeah, it's alright. Kind of like spinach. Not bad at all. Definitely more appetizing than most leaves you'll be able to eat. But not exactly something I buy in the grocery store, but I think it's pretty tasty. But yeah, various authors will say that the entire plant, except for the roots, are edible. Others will say that the entire plant, including the roots, are edible. From the best of my research, I've determined that the entire plant probably is safe to eat, but just the roots are not nearly as palatable. I'm not going to be trying them just in case, but really there's no point to eat them. Now, if you wish to forage this plant, it's best to do it early in the year. It can emerge from the ground as early as early February, going into May, although at higher altitudes it may continue to last longer. It's best to get before it blooms, which it clearly is right now, so it may be a little late, frankly, to get the best out of it, but I still think it's pretty tasty, as you saw in the video. Anyways, just remember, there are other people that want to eat this plant, and even more important than that, there are animals that want to eat it or actually need to eat it. They can't just go to a grocery store and get whatever they want at any time. And even if it wasn't edible at all, you know, it is a plant still. It does have its own aspirations. It probably wants to do its own thing. Let's start a family with Mr. or Mrs. Claytonia perfoliata, have a bunch of cute little miner's lettuce babies that it will, well, never get to see. Not because it's a plant that doesn't have eyes or even a nervous system, but because it's an annual plant. So by the time its seeds start to germinate, it'll already be long dead. But yeah, maybe consider growing some in your yard. If you have like a perpetually damp spot, maybe an area where a sprinkler sprays a little too much, or an area underneath a leaky rain gutter that you don't want to fix, just plant a couple seeds. I don't really care how you get them, and just see what happens. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.